Welcome back to another episode of Together is Better. And today we've got an interview that I've been dying to have where we're going to dive into artificial intelligence. We're going to talk a little bit about SAP, but we're going to talk more broadly about the tech landscape. And we're also going to go into a really fascinating conversation about personal development. My guest today is Marcel Hartmann, who has recently moved to Atlanta. Welcome to Atlanta, Marcel. And he's just one of the most fascinating guys that I've talked to in a long time. We've had the opportunity to get introduced over the last year or so. And every time I have a conversation with you, I learn something. So thank you for joining the show. I've been asking you for months if we can try to get you on, but you're one of the busiest guys on the planet, it seems. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, global executive, right? You've had a very storied career, accomplished quite a bit. What brought you and your family to the United States?
Curiosity overall, I would say.
Yeah.
So German, you probably figured by accent, German, born and raised in Munich. And then working in the software scene pretty much my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, we relocated to Berlin. Meanwhile, we spent 1 year in Korea, South Korea and Seoul. That was a good year when we had our first son. Then we relocated to Berlin. After Berlin, we spent a couple of years in Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And now since 1 year, we are here pretty much.
Yeah.
But everything fueled by company, right? So in this case, now here by SAP.
Yep.
So that was a good enabler.
How do you like Atlanta?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Does it remind you of any of the places that you've lived before, or is it just totally unique?
Well, it's totally unique in a way, right? So, living in Europe, I see the commonalities between, of course, Munich and Berlin. It's both German, mm-hmm. obviously. I see the commonality between living in Germany and in Spain, Barcelona. You might assume that it's very similar when you think, well, States, Western society, same stuff pretty much. Mm. Even though I'm very much exposed to the United States since I'm, 30 years back, because my sister, I have older sisters, and one is living in New York, California now. First New York, then California. And I'm visiting her since I'm 15, I think, right? So 30 years back. So I know Americans quite good and quite well. But now living here, working here is more different than I assumed, in fact, right? So one of the differences, for example, is in Europe, there's more consensus needed, like as a society, but also from a working culture.
Right.
See, there's more consensus needed. Whereas in America, I would say it's more like get the stuff done, right? And I hear it literally every day. We'll figure it out. And I love that, right? So, and this was something I was not exposed to much when I saw my sister and my wife's family.
Sure.
They're also living in the States, right? But now being exposed to this, like, okay, let's get it done, right? We don't need to plan out everything like we in Europe do, as in particular the Germans, right? We try to make awesome plans nonstop pretty much for everything and work out every potential detail. But here it's just like, yeah, get it done. We'll figure it out. And that's a big difference, I would say.
Yeah, the cultural differences whenever you go work or travel for work anywhere around the world are really fascinating to me, right? And there's a lot of things that each culture, I think, brings to the table. The Germans, for example, like you're spot on, right? Being German myself, just the attention to detail, the precision that is involved. Where in America, we do operate more on we're just going to go figure it out.
Right.
And sometimes we don't, but we move fast. And I think that's kind of the cultural piece of that.
Exactly.
And there's some certain advantage of that. For your family, how has that integration been? Okay?
Yeah, it's good. But
yeah.
I would lie if I say it was not without challenges,
sure.
right? So also when we decided, it started with basically the decision at the time when we were living in Barcelona still and said, okay, now let's take this opportunity. Let's go to Atlanta, Alpharetta, and then let's relocate, right? And then at the time, my wife and I are having the discussion, should we do this? Yes, no. It's a good opportunity. What is it for the kids? But first we were having the discussion among us, not involving the kids, because we wanted to be first solid among us. If that's something what we want to pursue, yes, no.
Yeah.
But then my wife was doing the research about the city and all the things, right? But our oldest son, meanwhile 14, 12 at the time, right? Almost 13. He kind of picked it up somehow, right? And then I remember one day he came into my room and he said, are we moving to Atlanta? And I said, well, maybe. right? Maybe we do.
Did you ever hear Mom and I?
Did you pick it up? He says, yeah, I'm not ready. So we can't do this. I don't want to build new friendships all along, right? So I was forced to do this when we moved to Spain. Within Spain, we changed school 3 times, right? So a British school, another British school, then the German school because it was closer, and then German school and whatever, right? And then he said, I got to build friends every 2 years. It's too much, right? I can't do this. And so that was a little bit of a challenge at the beginning, right? Even before we started. So, that's why I'm saying the challenge of relocation or of moving started before we moved, right? And then I had a good discussion with him on that same incident, right? So because he said that, and then I said, okay, I understand every single point what you say. Every single point, it's true, right? You have your friendships, it's established relationships, you have good buddies, and yes, you've done this over and over again, and it's a challenge, and now you're tired of it. I get every single point. But let me just say this, because I have a lot of discussions with him about mindset, attitude, philosophy, right? So how do you approach life and these kind of things? And I said, well, you and I you like when we have these discussions, right? And he says, yeah, I like that. And I said, these discussions, that is America, right? So this kind of this grit, this mindset of getting stuff done, pushing through this, not giving up, discipline, consistency, that is America, right? So you will not find this in a society too much elsewhere, but very, very dominant in the States, right? And so we kept talking about this for 10 minutes, I would say. So then he left without saying a word. Right? I was just, Jesus, what's that now? The next day in the morning, he comes into the room. He said, I thought about the stuff what you said yesterday, Dad. I'm ready. Let's go.
That's great.
And this was so inspiring for me then at the time, his reaction, right? And then also from the other kids, right? Because I have 3 boys. And kind of the oldest boy kind of sets a little bit the tone, because if he's in, then he kind of pulls the others too, right? Because they were at the beginning also a little bit afraid. He's like, yeah, do we need to do this? And we all have the friends. But then he kind of was making the talk to them, right?
Yeah.
And convinced them. So that was really something remarkable, and I'm very proud of the family. So then we finally relocated, but then yes, the rubber hits the road, as there's the saying, and then they really had to build their friendships. They really had to integrate into this, new society and all these things. But finally now, looking 1 year back, it was work, right? But they're well established now. They have the friendships.
Yeah, to me, when you look at seasoned international business executives like yourself, right? That have gone and lived in different cultures, et cetera, and you move your family in that environment, it's to me very similar to a military family in the U.S., right? Where, like my uncle's family, they lived in Germany twice. They lived in Panama. They've lived in Japan, et cetera. And it is a challenge, right? My cousins, it was always a challenge for them, but they ended up being some of the most well-rounded, grounded, people with such a respect and understanding of other cultures and a lot of empathy, right? So there's certainly that. The kids won't get it at that age, but over time, you'll certainly have that. But I'm so happy for you guys.
100% agree. They absorb that.
Yeah. I want to talk about mindset here in a second, but I just kind of want to go back to, what brought you to Atlanta. And then the mindset piece is really fascinating to me. So we'll spend a lot of time on that. So describe kind of what you're doing now and what really brought you here, the role that you're doing here in Atlanta.
Right. Yeah. So I'm leading the so-called digital hub for SAP in North America. So that was also very similar what I was doing in Barcelona. So I built up, or was part of building up, the digital hub in Barcelona at the time, responsible for Northern Europe, EMEA North, right? And now, basically, because that worked out quite nice, that's why I was brought over to do the same for North America. And that is headquartered in Alpharetta, in the Avalon area, which is a very nice neighborhood.
Yes.
And that's what I'm doing. So what does it mean, or what is that digital hub? So the digital hub basically means it's a co-location of sales supporting functions in a nutshell, right? And what sets us apart is the way we operate and engage with customers and also internally, because what we are using is digital modalities, as we call it. So the latest and greatest tools, let it be AI or any other tools that allow you to scale and have more effective and efficient reach out to customers, but also to simply do more. So that's what we are spearheading for SAP in North America, right? So that's the team. And that encapsulates all kinds of resources. So also sales supporting functions, let it be pre-sales, value advisory, business development, assets management, these kind of things.
I think it's a very revolutionary and super innovative concept. I like that SAP's been on the forefront of it. I haven't really seen it yet, but I'm hearing from other businesses that are starting to kind of move in that direction. It just makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah.
Right. There's so much disruption happening just at the macros with artificial intelligence and other things. It seems like the digital hub provides kind of that incubator approach to a lot of that customers are needing because we communicate different. Do you feel like the way you outreach and communicate with customers is different than even 5 years ago?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
We see the customers, they don't want that 15 people come necessarily on site anymore, right? So that these days are over. And probably COVID was a catalyst for that.
I think
right?
so.
There's a way, way higher acceptance of remote meetings, right?
Yep.
But it's not only that, it's also, and I think that's almost a minimum equal driver, is we are all consumers and business people at the same time. So in a consumer world, right, you have this expectation that you have instant access to information, or at least very, very fast. Mm-hmm. So if you want to subscribe to Netflix or Spotify, it's not to say, yeah, whatever, give me access then in a week if I pay now or if I sign some so that's not feasible, right? So we are used to have instant access to information and instant progressing in some pursuit, right? And this is what we aim for with the Digital Hub, that we have a very high velocity in terms of responding to customer requests, providing demos. So this will not take us 2 weeks to do. It will take us 2 hours, best case, or so 2 days, right? Depends on the circumstance, of course.
Yeah. In my career, right, always kind of on the license side, even though that's changed as well. The time it took and the customer's expectations of what they wanted to see has radically changed, right? And so I think, again, having that at the customer's fingertips for when they want to consume information is got to be at that consumer level. Right, to put it mildly. So I think it's a brilliant concept in what you guys are doing. Let's talk a little bit more broadly about how you guys look at content and maybe AI. Anything that you guys learned while you were kind of developing the Digital Hub in Barcelona that you guys can double down on or changed or wanted to add to?
Yeah, I think in principle the use of AI or then the smaller versions of automation,
right?
We are very much spearheading this, right? I mean, or let's talk about AI in a broader sense even.
Yeah.
What was the IQ of Einstein? Let it be 160, right? And I think the latest version of OpenAI's ChatGPT that had, I think that was the 4.0, had 155.
Yeah.
So now imagine this continues. So, I mean, this is in its infancy.
Yes.
And already is on the same level as Einstein. So now project this 1 year forward, 5 years forward, 10 years forward. Imagine there's some thing, that has an IQ of potentially 1,500. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Even thinking about this stuff. Okay, so now back to the current state, right?
Yeah.
We are using everything what's possible now. So we are infusing AI in pretty much everything what we do. Is it in qualifying customers or prospects? Mm-hmm. Is it in how we engage with them? Let it be video. For example, we just had yesterday some case where some business development representative, she was recording something briefly, like even a funny sentence, the cat runs down the wall.
Yeah.
And then the AI video tool picks up the voice. And then you just type in, copy paste the text message or what you want to send to the prospects, and then the AI creates the video with the right mouth movement, everything tailored. So it's personified and very, very precise and very rich in content.
Yeah.
But you can scale it, right? That's possible today already.
Yeah, I like the mindset at the Digital Hub, being in there several times, where you've got 3D printing, right? You've got all of these things that are fostering, sparking. Right. Innovative thinking within that team. And it seems like a lot of them too are of the younger generation that are very comfortable with those technologies as well. Do you find that there's a difference in ability to really take advantage of these technologies from one generation to the other?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So if I even compare it to myself, I'm in this industry, I'm very interested, and I'm tech savvy.
Yeah.
But if I look at these youngsters starting, they just outpace me.
Yeah.
Right? In the way they adopt these tools. It's unbelievable because they try out all kinds of new stuff nonstop. And that's amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm still learning to figure out this one tool and, try to get used to it, they found four other tools, right?
That's
and then
crazy.
one tool that I'm comfortable with is outdated in 6 months because there's so much advancements going on.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, even though I'm so open for it, but still they outpace me, right? So they're still faster than most of us, I would say. So
I
yes.
think they're learning faster.
Yeah.
And I guess some of the things that block us, right? Maybe it's habit or just whatever. Their ability to take multiple different tools and then use them also together.
Right. Yeah.
Where I may focus on only one, right? Like ChatGPT, for example. They'll string 2 or 3 of those together.
Right.
So it is amazing.
Yeah.
So going back to artificial intelligence, so that whole concept of the speed at which it is changing is really, in a lot of ways, mind-blowing to me. And I think a lot of people underestimate it. Where do you see, where do you see application companies in the next 2 years and how they're using AI? To me, it's going to be so infused in literally every process that they have, every tool that they have. And I think those that aren't embracing it fully are going to be completely left behind.
Yeah.
I think it's going to blow people away in the next 12 months.
100%. I believe so too. So, I understand that some people are afraid of, will AI replace human workforce in a way? I think this will partially happen.
Yes.
But what I think will happen 100% is that people who refuse to use AI, they will 100% be replaced by people who decide to use it.
Yes.
Right. So I think it more as an enhancement of our capabilities and our skills when we adopt this properly. So now coming to your point of applications, I think SAP is in a great position here because they pretty much know, as no other company on the planet, in all fairness, the intimate process of literally everything what's going on in every company, in every industry.
Yeah.
Right. And if you infuse this with AI, this can be very, very powerful. Right. I mean, again, it's still in its infancy. Kind of this process automation is kind of the first step, but now putting AI intelligence on top, that finally, in a couple of years, you might say, well, it's not that I only need to ask the right questions. This AI agent called Joule, in our case, in SAP's case, is providing answers to things that I would not have considered even, right? Providing suggestions. And then it's just on me to make the final call, final decision. And I think we are clearly heading down this route, right? I mean, of course, SAP is not the only player. Every big tech company is going down this route. Yeah. SAP has this advantage of knowing all the processes within companies, within industries, and other companies have other advantages.
I think it's a huge advantage for them.
Yeah.
You look at the percentage of businesses that run on SAP, like I forgot what the stat was. I mean, it was for Global 1000 or whatever, it was like 85%.
Yeah.
Right. And just the knowledge, whether it's automotive, CPG, oil and gas, the depth of the understanding of the processes, because the AI use cases that need to be developed have got to be industry specific in a lot of different ways, right? To really extract value. And then how they've consolidated, and looked across the platform itself, I think is going to be very timely, but it's just brilliant the way that they've laid it out.
Right.
So smart strategy. I think as you kind of go back to the broader piece on the AI, I think it was Paul Tudor, who's a huge investor, and there was some other person that was knowledgeable about this that said there is a 10% chance that in 20 years AI destroys all of humanity. Do we ever think that it gets that smart? Because you're talking about 1,500 IQ. Do you ever think that it evolves to have, true awareness of who it is, or is it going to just be at a certain level to where it's just going to kind of take over certain processes. What's your thought on that, or your prediction? It's kind of a broad ask.
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
I think so let's put it like this. I don't believe that AI will erase humanity. So that's my starting point.
Yes.
I'm very convinced that this is not happening.
Yeah.
But it will be a very, very, very integrated coexistence.
Yeah.
Right? And on some elements, there will be such an enrichment and enhancement technology-wise, but that has such an intense ripple effect for us. So I believe that the impact of AI will have such a tremendous impact of how human race, develops, that I believe that humans in 100 years will be different humans than us. I think they have different brain capacity pretty much, than we do have now, right? So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes. But I see the threats, but I'm not one of these people who see the world going down or human race dying.
Well, I think Europe is ahead in really seriously discussing safeguards, right? Because again, we're building this, right? And so if we're not building in controls and the right level of safeguards, then I think you're right. The challenge obviously is rogue governments, right? And others that, get their arms on these things and weaponize them in some capacity. But I think the potential for good is so high.
Exactly.
Drug design, for example, to cure diseases.
Right.
All of these amazing discoveries that could happen, different types of energy or fusion, to take us out into the stars.
Right.
I think we'll solve some really hard problems very, very quick.
Yeah.
And, probably much faster than people think.
Right.
But you touched on one area that I really want to get into, which is kind of the humanity part of that. One of the things we talk about often on this podcast is mindset. We talk about, high caliber, high quality, high performing teams. I know that's been a big passion of yours. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about, what your mindset is for performance and, why it's really important to you?
Thanks. Well, maybe it makes sense now to tell a little story around this, how this developed, right? And I'm studying or researching high performance people since I'm 22. So that's now 24 years, right? I was always fascinated. Why do some people simply achieve more than others? Mm-hmm. So that's this very simple question I was asking myself all the time. Like, why is this person such a great achiever and some others mediocre and some others really not achieving anything at all? And I was on that quest of figuring out, right? And then over the years and decades, I had the feeling, like currently how we look at this from a society perspective, I always had this feeling there's some missing link, right? And
missing link in what way?
Missing link in terms of how to articulate it and express this, that it's clear that there's something that yields to this achievement, right? Yeah. And then I looked at, there are so many different kinds of way to describe someone's intelligence, right? So the obvious ones are IQ, right? Okay, that's the cognitive power. How well can you comprehend situations, apply logic, mathematical skills, these kind of things, logic reasoning. Then obviously, I think 1996 it was development of EQ, emotional quotient, right? So all these kind of self-awareness, empathy, so these topics. But I always had this feeling there's some element missing that kind of emphasizes, that if you have this high, then you're going to be a high achiever, right? Pretty much. And that brought me to this concept of AQ, and I call it, or I coined it AQ, and that stands for Action Quotient. And that is simply, in a nutshell, the skill of getting stuff done, right? And I mean, even though it sounds so simple, but it's simple but not easy in a way, right? To get the stuff
It's
done.
easy to plan. It's a lot harder to
Exactly.
right? Do it.
And then suddenly it hit me, because I figured, oh my God, everything what I studied about these high performers, and everything what I observed and all these patterns that I tried to figure out, now everything fell into a place, right? So all these puzzle pieces kind of fit together, right? And that was really where I say, wow, now I kind of have it, right? That's now the missing link in a way.
So kind of break that down a little bit further.
Right.
So as you talk about AQ, so action quotient,
right?
I think it fits actually naturally, right, between the EQ and the IQ. Describe kind of what you mean in that.
Yeah. So as simple as it sounds, but behind every achievement, every single one, is it athlete, is it in business, is it in all the other roles that we have as a father, as a friend, as a husband, as a brother, as a mother, you name it. But there's behind every big achievement, and it's most visible in sports, but again, true for everything else.
Sure.
It's always a process behind this. So, and the process is very simple. I call it the 4A process. You can also give it different names, but at the end, it's very simple. First, you got to know where to go. That's the aim, first A. The second one is then the approach. How do you plan to get there? Also very simple, straightforward. Third step is the action. Do the steps to get there. And then the fourth A is assess, means check in and see if you're still on track. If not, then, do it all over again or, deviate a little bit, right? So that is very simple. That is the process. And then I was asking, okay, this is so unbelievable simple. What makes people stick to the process? Why do people not stick to the process, right? And then I figured, okay, there are a couple of virtues or qualities that if you develop them consciously, or some people have it inherently, right? Great for them. Mm-hmm. Then you will stick to the process and ultimately become one of these high achievers, right? And you can break this down, in my opinion, in 3 elements. Number 1 is your personal philosophy, right? The second element is then the mindset itself. And the third part is then basically the behavior. And each of these categories, they also have then a couple of qualities where you say, okay, what do you mean by personal philosophy? What do you mean by mindset? And what do you mean by behavior? So each then we can break down,
Are they all 3 equal?
I would say
terms
yes.
of
They're kind of codependent on each other.
Yeah, they have to be.
But the thing is this, if you're too weak on one, it's not enough. So you got to be balanced as always, right? If you say, well, let's give an example. Let's say you have the most obvious one where you say, okay, discipline, consistency, and you're all in on that, right? Okay, great, good for you. But if it's not smartly designed, if you're running in the wrong direction, or
if you're not aiming at the right thing.
Exactly, right? So how clear are you about that goal, what you're pursuing? Do you have the courage of continuing to go voluntarily into the unknown and into this discomfort and say, well, every exposure, every growth happens in discomfort. Mm-hmm. Growth is not happening where I say, well, I'm sitting in the chair drinking a beer and life is good to me, right? Yeah. So that's not where growth happens. It happens in the discomfort, right? And so how willing are you to voluntarily go into this unknown area, into this discomfort? So there's so many things we can go as deep as you want, right?
Yeah.
But so many things that kind of need to fit together. And if one element is kind of too off, that's then where people kind of are less balanced and hence a little bit less achieving.
Let's dig deeper into that, right? Okay. So as you're aiming for where you are, is there a right starting point? Is there an overreach that you can go for? Like, when are you taking those measurements? I'd like to unpack all of that because I think it's fascinating on that philosophy with it, because action is the part that's always been missing from the smartest people I know.
Right.
Where, you look at them, you're like, why are you underachieving? Right. There's so much you could do. There's something missing there.
Right.
And it sounds like you've kind of figured out a playbook, right, on how to get people to really be at the top of their performance.
Right. So it starts, in my opinion, it really starts with this, as I call it, personal philosophy or attitude, okay, which is kind of a way, how do you approach life, right?
Are you a cynic? Are you positive? Are you?
It goes in this direction, but would you agree with the assumption that you say, and that's kind of the first element of this philosophy, that your actions have consequences? Or do you think life is just happening to you, right? And if you say, well, if I believe that what I do has impact, right? So if I have this input and then I can expect some kind of different output, that my actions have consequences, that there's cause and effect, that kind of personal responsibility is key, right? So if that's missing, then there's already a problem, right? And also on a higher level, I think, and that's probably something, maybe the main thing what sets us apart from other living organisms is, a tree or an animal is not on its way up, on its growth journey. They don't say halfway up, oh, I'm done. The tree is not saying, well, that's good enough, as good as it can be, that the other stuff is just too high for me. Or, any other animal, it's not, they say, yeah, come on, that's good enough. Right. Let it just be. But we as humans, we can decide not to grow. We have choice. We have the choice to say, I'm not realizing my potential. We have that choice, right? But we also have the choice, okay, figure out what that potential is. And this is the starting point, right, in my opinion. And with this then comes the personal philosophy.
It's a self-realization
100%.
that I'm missing something to take me to the next level.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think what I like about this and what's fascinating me when we talked about it, previously, is there's not a framework to really examine that in somebody's life. There's all these self-help things, et cetera, but there's something always missing from those. So
yeah. And then when you go deeper and to say, okay, coming back to this personal philosophy, all right, so I understand that. Let's take personal responsibility for my life, right? And my family and my surroundings. Okay, great, good. So what's next then? The next element in this then is, who are you? Like, as what person do you identify, right? So what's your self-image? So do you see yourself as somebody who, as the father that you want to be, as the mother that you want to be, as the friend that you want to be, right? Or do you have this kind of thing like, yeah, typically I start stuff, but I don't get it done. Typically I have dreams, but I never execute on them. They just remain dreams. So what's your identity? And I think many people don't think about their identity. Mm-hmm. And that can be cultivated and developed, but you got to make a conscious decision on that, right? So that is the other element. And the third element of personal philosophy, is then the belief. What is it what you really deep down believe? Like, give you a very, very obvious and stupid example, right? If you now talk to me, hey, Marcel, would you believe that you can build the next Amazon? If yeah, I'd love to. This is my dream.
Be amazing.
Deep down, I don't believe.
Yeah,
I don't believe that. Right?
Yeah.
I will not do that. Right?
Yeah.
I don't believe that I could achieve that. I will not build the next Tesla. So I don't believe it. But there is some stuff what deep down we do believe. What is that? Right? Bring it up.
So
look at this.
Would you say too that it's what are you truly capable of? Because there's a difference obviously between desire and ambition, and then what you're capable of.
Right.
But you want to find that stretch somewhere. To your point, like somebody said, "Hey, could I build the next Amazon?" No, I don't think that's I don't think that's in my capacity. Right. So I guess there's a self-realization element, obviously.
Right.
But then there's the self-doubt one.
Exactly.
You got to figure out how do you get there somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Self-doubt is one of the worst detractors of this on this journey. Next to blame, by the way, blame and excuses. A way to tackle this self-doubt is becoming competent. As easy or as difficult as that is. But become confident. Maybe let's start with this. And then the next question is, well, how do you become confident?
Well, doesn't competence bring confidence?
Exactly. So how to become confident is becoming competent, right? Yeah. Because typically then, otherwise it's just arrogance, right? You say, I'm great in this area, but you're not.
Right.
So confidence is built on competence pretty much, right? And how to become competent is if you say, well, you put effort in to learn something, to come to this previous point, to go into the unknown and skill up, level up in whatever that area is, right? And typically, that's just how we humans operate. We then bench benchmark ourselves with this respective peer group. Well, how good of a tennis player am I? How good of a soccer player am I? Well, I look at my peers and I look at the other guys and how they play. How good of a business person am I? Well, I look at them, right? And then if you keep growing, you say, well, I'm not too bad actually, right? Now I think I outworked, I outpaced, I outperformed, or whatever, right? Them. Then become more competent, then you become more confident, and this reflects in your identity again, right?
Yeah.
Where everything then kind of fits together.
Interesting. What are some of the other things that you evaluate in that, right? And then I'd like to start talking about like what can people do, like what actions should you take, like what level of reflection,
right. So another big thing is then the second element or big bucket is then the mindset itself, right? And this consists in, for example, or I would say pretty much of three things. One is courage, clarity, and resilience in particular, right? So the number one, clarity, is if you ask now people, do you know where you want to be in 5 years? And not be in one element, right? In a career or one tiny part, but where you want to be in 5 years as a human being, in your whole completeness, right? And I believe we all have several roles and responsibilities. In a business, typically I typically distinguish in 4 buckets. Like one is the business responsibility, the other one is then family, the third one is health, very important, right? And then social, like friends and all these things, right? And
the balanced life.
Exactly. But and very often, by the way, if somebody, and that's why also this research for the last 24 years was so hard, because if somebody is a high performer in one area, very often they lack in another area. Especially for business people. I mean, I think there's so many stories where they're super successful in business, but then the partnership, relationship, marriage is not going super well, disconnected from the kids, the health is down the drain, whatever it can be, no social life, no friends, whatever.
LinkedIn is all about that. There's testimony of,
right.
I achieved everything I wanted. I had this, and this success in career, but I didn't know my children. I lost my wife. I just had, diagnosed with X, Y, and Z because I didn't take care of myself.
Right.
Yeah, it's so critical.
Yeah. So coming back then to this other one is then this clarity. Are you clear about that stuff? Are you clear about...
I don't think people are.
Very often not, unfortunately. No. Are you clear about what type of father, mother you want to be? What type of brother, sister you want to be? What type of partner you want to be? What type of business professional you want to be? What type of friend you want to be? So many things, right? Yeah. And I believe most of the people are just going with the flow. They're just, drifting may sound a little too negative, but it's almost I think it's drifting along,
Yeah.
And one thing is for sure, you're going to end up somewhere in 5 years. The question is just where, right?
Yeah.
You will be somewhere, but is it a conscious choice where you say, I'm going to end up there, right? That you try to navigate into this direction, or do you just drift with the wind? Because it will bring you somewhere, very likely not where you want to be.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the clarity part. Okay. Do you think about these kind of things? The next part is then, okay, great. I'm super clear now where I want to be. I have figured it out and all the elements and all these 4 buckets, right, of life's complexities and whatnot. Do I have the courage to go there? So that's the next element. The courage to really voluntarily go there. I mentioned that before, which is a tough one, right? Because this is where I believe growth happens, right? But you gotta over and over again. It's not that you say, well, I did it once and then you're done for life. It's a conscious decision all over again, right? Pretty much in all these facets of life, to go into this unknown and this discomfort, like not knowing if you can make it. Right?
But is that failure also growth?
That's what it is,
right? So
100%.
Being uncomfortable matters, right? As a first-time CEO, there was a lot of uncomfortable,
for sure,
right? But the growth that I've experienced from that, I wouldn't trade for anything.
Exactly.
Right. And I think, in other elements of all of our lives where we've failed in something, we've all learned something from that and then grew from it. I wonder if that failure part is a really critical piece of it.
I would not even call it failure. It's learning.
Okay. That's a great way to think about it.
100%.
Yeah.
Look at all the athletes. They never would call it a failure at all.
Yeah.
For them, it's all learning, right? I mean, you know this famous example from Michael Jordan when he says he missed 9,000 shots.
Yeah.
I mean, if he would not have trained so hard and missed all that stuff, he would not have made the others one in.
That's right.
That's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's also true for life. 100% agree on that part. It's not failures, it's life lessons. I mean, but also that depends on your personal philosophy. How do you see that? Oh, I'm a failure. I did not get that done. Or do you see it as, okay, it's one way. I figured out one way now how to do it not, right? And then you grow from that.
Yeah, to me, the way you've described that, there's a single thread. They're all symbiotic and relational, right? Because if you haven't thought through where you want to go, if you haven't thought through, the accountability you need to have, the discipline you need to have, the mindset you need to have, how do you check that along the way to make sure that you're not going off course? Is there a methodology that you've created or thought of?
Yeah. At the end, as simple as it sounds, and luckily it's very easy. You just got to self-reflect.
Yeah.
For proper self-reflection, you got to be quiet and sit still for 30 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right. Find an easy place where you can really kind of not run like life runs you pretty much. I was recently on an executive training, and then we were doing some exercise where we kind of were encouraged to just take a walk in next to that lake, right, for 15 minutes. And then there was this guy coming back after the exercise. He said, it felt very uncomfortable. And I was just like, what do you mean it felt uncomfortable? We were just walking around the lake. He says, yeah, but I never thought about these kind of things that we were encouraged to think about, right? I never thought about that stuff. It made me very uncomfortable. I'm never going to do this again, right? So that also says something, right? So
no doubt.
I think really for this, you got to really sit, or as Jordan Peterson says, right? Sit at the edge of your bed, think for 10 minutes. What is it, what you should do, what you could do that you're currently not doing, right?
Yeah.
So it goes all in this direction. I would call this simple self-reflection, right? And that's also part of the model, by the way, right? Because you got to check in with yourself. Am I on track?
I think people miss that. It's a huge point. Like I've even gone away, rented a cabin, right? And I think in the same kind of time that we'll all do fasting, right? To where you're cleansing parts of your body, you're cleansing your mind as well to allow you to have a different perspective, right, on things. So if you get away for 2 or 3 days and do a fast during that,
oh my God,
it's spiritual,
so
it's enlightening, and go up there with a Bible and a whiteboard, right, and get yourself right for the year, right?
Awesome.
Re-index yourself mentally, spiritually, physically. I think it's super important, because really what we do is we just drain ourselves constantly.
Exactly.
We pour into our family or a job or something else. How do you fill that tank?
Yeah.
Back up, often. And through self-reflection, you start to recognize it before real damage is done.
Exactly. I have also my personal routine is also very simple. Like every morning when I get up, before everybody else, I love green tea, right? Mm-hmm. So I have Japanese green tea. I prepare my green tea, and I don't put on my phone, so it's still in flight mode, right? No messages, nothing. And I just take the green tea, sit outside, look into the trees, into the garden, and just, don't let myself be interrupted from anybody or anything, right? So, and that lasts for 15 minutes, 30 minutes tops until, life hits you, and then the rest of the show starts. But this is my quiet time. This is the time where I think about these kind of things nonstop. Am I the father that I want to be? Well, what's the stuff what I can improve? Is everything in balance? I think a lot about balance at the end, because I don't believe in these single performances.
Yes.
Or at least that's not my philosophy, because I want to be balanced for life and not have one insane achievement and then the others fall off.
Yeah.
So that's what I do every morning, every single day.
What are some other things that high performers in life, not just in business, should be thinking about?
Life is tough. We also need to have awareness and respect that we need to have a decent amount of resilience.
Yeah.
I mean, you just brought it up, like some people call it failures, but on that road, whatever we think the journey is, there will be bumps, and quite hefty bumps.
Yeah.
Right. And try to navigate them. Try to be the strong person. Make a conscious decision to be the strong person that you think, okay, I think I can manage life's challenges. Right. And that can be cultivated. I really believe that. I know it, right?
Well,
in a way.
Yeah. So one of our previous guests is Gareth Gorman, right? So 2 decades, special operations,
Right.
15 deployments in the Middle East. Resilience and mindset are unbelievably important. And yes, they can be taught, right? And I think most people aren't as resilient as they need to be. We talk about resilience so often in business, like, oh, we have to have, resiliency in this or that. But, how many people really examine that in their own lives for the setbacks that they get? And that's why people tip over into alcohol or things like that. They're filling something in their lives that, are damaging to them, and they're not, resilient like they think they are. They're just masking it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I believe also for that, that's a great example that some people then tip into alcohol or any other drugs or so.
Yeah.
What I believe in this case, what's missing is this higher purpose, right? Why would you do all that?
Yeah.
Why would you aim for what you aim for?
Yeah.
And I think that why is a very personal answer, what people probably need to answer.
Yeah.
Very often I would assume it's family related, that you say, okay, I want to provide good, safe environment for the family. I think that's all some reasons, but most people, I think they don't think about that stuff, right? So they just drift along.
Yeah. There's a hole inside certain people. For me, as a follower of Christ, right? That's where I get my fulfillment. Right. I don't worry about a lot of things that over worry other people.
Right.
There's a foundation that I'm built on, and it went through a lot of adversity to get to that. By the way, like I didn't just come out of the womb and I'm like, hey, I'm a Jesus follower. That didn't happen that way. There were a lot of things that happened in my life that culminated into me surrendering in the way that I needed to. So, but I think you're right. I think people fill that emptiness in different ways, and I think a lot of it too is because they're drifting. Right. Sometimes bad things have happened to really good people. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. But I think a lot of people they haven't taken the time to reflect, and they haven't taken a methodology, right, that allows them to really take account for each one of those different pieces,
right,
and spending the time to go do that and reflecting on that.
Right.
It's very simple when you kind of put in the terms that you did. It sounds very simplistic, but to put that action into the AQ, right, requires some amount of discipline.
Yeah.
Right. How do you get people started on something like that?
It starts really with the awareness, right? So conversations like this, where then people typically leave like, okay, wow, like never thought about it in that way. That's inspiring. And then they take 1-2 snippets, nuggets, and then they kind of ponder on that, right? Yeah. And then one leads to another, right? Typically, because then if you taste it, if you go down the route of AQ development, like a conscious development of your action quotient in a way, right? If you try this out and then you somehow start tasting the first successes and differences and feel, it's very much about feelings also, how your life improves. It's just, wow, man, I'm not stopping on that road. Let's just continue.
Have you thought about talking to the other SAP executives or other executives about it?
Indirectly.
Well, I think it's brilliant. To me, it's about the fact that you've spent 24 years, really just doing deep research into that, is puts you on a path, and clearly it's working. You've got a great family, right? You've been very successful. You're healthy. You've got all the things working. So you've really taken the time to examine what it means to fulfill the life that you want and take the steps that are required towards it.
I think everybody can, honestly. Yeah. I deeply believe everybody can. Yeah. You just said it before, life hits you now and then.
Yes.
Everybody gets hit, right? So it's very fragile in a way, which is also almost, frustrating in a way. Yeah. That just everything is perfect, and then there's some random horrible event happening, sick child, or you get sick yourself, accident, some weird stuff that's absolutely out of control. But I would say almost every life experiences one or more of these events, these drastic or dramatic events, right? But then how do you navigate through them, right? Do you want to give up?
Yeah.
Want to put the head in the sand? Or you say, well, that's just how life is, right? Yeah. And then continue, right? Find a way through this and I mean literally through this, because I think there's no avoidance in a way in life. Find a way through this. And I deeply believe that AQ helps you on that, right? And when I look at the people who are, and that's also a form of high performance in my opinion, it's not always the ones who have the big bucks and everything, but the ones who can get themselves back up after a catastrophe.
100%.
Right? That is high performance, right? If you lose almost everything, your health, your kids, your wife, your whatnot, and come back up and live a life where you feel meaning and happiness again. That's a high achievement.
But and the appreciation and gratitude.
Exactly.
Gratitude is a huge piece of mindset to me as well.
Oh yeah.
Right. On how you actually have a view of the world. Are you grateful that that person, thought of you and was sending you a note saying, something, just kind to you or whatever. The little things matter.
Right. 100%.
Right. And that's a perspective as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't be bitter, that you don't have something that somebody else has. Be grateful for what you do have.
Right.
God's blessed you.
Exactly.
In so many amazing ways. You just have to have the right mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
That brings me back to the very first point, right?
Yeah.
We can decide on everything. We can decide to be bitter, sarcastic. We can decide to be positive, negative. We can choose. Animals cannot choose. Trees cannot, or nature cannot choose. We can choose.
Well, hey, I got to tell you, today was a super positive conversation. I'm grateful. I love this methodology and approach. Again, I just thank you so much for coming on and sharing who you are, right? We talk a lot about tech, but sometimes we don't always talk about what makes people true tech leaders and good human beings. And you're certainly all of the above. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Marcel.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.